My son cuts me out of his life during the divorce with my cheating husband because the mistresses introduced him to their friends, but now he is desperate to reconcile after seeing the man I married. I'm 55 years old, and I have, or had, a 32-year-old son who recently contacted me after not speaking to me for more than 10 years. I shouldn't call it no contact, because he never actually told me he didn't want me to reach out. It's just that he gradually distanced himself from me and cut me out of his life. This happened because he was extremely against the idea of me divorcing his father. For this one reason alone, my son stopped contacting me completely. He messaged me a few days ago on Facebook and said he wanted to reconnect with me. The problem is that I really don't think it's a good idea. From his words, I could easily tell that he wants a relationship with me only because I make good money and I'm married to a man who earns even more. My husband is in the restaurant business and actually owns several places. I've also done well after the divorce. In 10 years I built a good life for myself and married a real man, too. I have a good relationship with his children, and we often go on vacations together. I think my son may have seen those photos on my profile and suddenly realized he shouldn't have cut me off. I know this because literally after the first few messages, he started talking about how I've been going on great vacations with my family and how he'd love it if I took him and his family too. He also began talking about how his kids have been dying to go on a good vacation, so it would be great if we could all go together next time. Apparently, it would help us bond and rebuild our relationship. For the record, I was never invited to my son's wedding, and I didn't even know who he was dating. He said he had kids, which is something else I didn't know. They kept me completely in the dark about anything happening in my son's life. So it doesn't feel right that he suddenly comes back and asks me to spend money on him and his family. I can't explain how angry I felt. Just seeing his messages brought all the old feelings back. I was extremely hurt and disappointed in my son, even though I never really talked about it. The moment he started acting as if everything was fine, I felt a rush of rage and sadness. I told him he couldn't just show up as if the last 10 years never happened and expect me to hand over money. I also told him that I hadn't heard from him in over 10 years, so he was as good as a stranger to me. As for his comment about my wealth and good life, I informed him of something he would have already known had he stayed in contact. He is completely disinherited and will receive nothing from me, nor from my husband, because why would he? But I can feel how he's already counting that money, with all his entitled talk about family vacations on my dime. After saying all of this, I stopped responding to his messages. I had a small breakdown, but my husband comforted me, and my stepchildren came the next day to try to cheer me up because I was feeling so awful. They were extremely angry at my son when they heard he messaged me and immediately started talking about money. Everyone thinks he's after the money, a shameless person who brought it up after only a few minutes. Maybe he said it as a joke, but that didn't make it any less tasteless. I really wanted to just move on, but my son is still messaging me, begging me to meet him. He hasn't said anything about the past, but he has apologized for not staying in touch. He's just asking me not to disinherit him, and he even said he loves me. I've been dying to hear that from him, but somehow, it's too late to make me feel anything now. It only reminded me of all those years I cried for my son while he ignored me and went on with his life. I know he's my son and I should be more forgiving, but I simply can't get over what he did. Sometimes I feel like I should give him a sum of money and tell him never to contact me again, but then I think about how he doesn't deserve my money when he didn't put in any effort to even stay in touch. Edit 1. Maybe I can give you some context about my divorce so you understand why I'm so shattered by what my son did. My ex and I divorced after my son graduated from college. I had been married to my ex since I was 20, and I got pregnant very early in the marriage. I finished college, but I never got a job because he wanted me to be a housewife. I gave up my dreams for him, and he rewarded that with a lot of cheating. I discovered several of his affairs when one of his young mistresses showed up at my house having a psychotic breakdown because she wanted him to leave me and be with her fully. She also showed me hard proof of my ex's cheating. I confronted my ex, and instead of apologizing or showing remorse, he simply told me to get over it. He thought he was justified in cheating because he couldn't have fun when he was young. He also said he found me old and boring, so it was fair for him to have a few affairs to keep himself happy. Yes, I didn't take long to file for divorce. To make things worse, my son didn't find any problem with his father's behavior. He completely supported his dad's logic and even told me I was making a big deal out of nothing. Later, I found out that sometimes my ex would invite my son to hang out when he was with his little affair girls, who had friends for my son. So my son had known everything all this time. Instead of telling me, he stayed quiet and enjoyed going out with my ex and his partners. When I finally filed for divorce, my ex and my son were extremely upset with me. They wanted me to stay in the marriage, and apparently continue being the maid while my ex went out and had fun. Thank God I had enough dignity not to stay in a marriage where I wasn't respected or valued. I divorced my ex despite their objections and started working. My son was extremely angry with me, and I was disappointed in him too. I still thought our relationship would survive. Well, it didn't. Slowly, over time, my son stopped talking to me and canceled any plans I tried to make to see him. My son stopped spending time with me and instead spent more time with his father. He literally cut me out of his life and pushed me away because I was no longer useful. I don't like putting children in the middle of marital problems, but my son supported the infidelity and chose to side with my ex. That's why it's so hard for me to reconnect with him now, especially when he's only reaching out because he smells money and thinks he's entitled to it somehow. Edit 2. I'm going to make a quick update here for you all. Some of you seem to think I've been punishing my son for choosing his father. I don't even know what you mean by choosing. My ex is my son's father, nothing was going to change that. There was no choice to be made. Let's say it plainly. My son agreed with my ex's excuse for why cheating wasn't a big deal, and because he got something out of it. My son knew how hurt I was by his father and the affair partner. Yet he still decided to support my ex's disgusting actions because some of the mistresses had friends just a bit older than him. Also, I was not the one who distanced myself from my son. He began distancing himself from me after I filed for divorce. He believed that his father and I could just work things out. He wanted me to forgive his disgusting father and continue the marriage pretending nothing was wrong. My son also had the nerve to tell me it was normal for men to cheat and that I shouldn't take it so seriously. Yes, he told his own mother to calm down because it was very normal for his father to cheat, because he was a man. I have no idea where he got this twisted logic, because I certainly never taught him that nonsense. I also didn't magically receive a replacement family. I found someone I loved, and it's just a coincidence that his children also love me back. They didn't hand me a new family out of nowhere, I had to work for it. My son had several opportunities to try to make things right. I would have welcomed him with open arms. But it's been nearly a decade since we last spoke, and even longer since we last saw each other. He got married, built his life, and moved on without me. He could have contacted me, but he didn't. In fact, I tried contacting him in the past, but I never got a response. My phone number was blocked, and he never replied to any social media messages. I'm a human being too, I couldn't keep dealing with constant rejection. So please stop telling me I should have tried harder to reconnect with him. I swear to you, I tried. How much more did you expect me to do? Update 1. Here I am with a proper update and not just edits. Before I begin, I need to apologize for getting defensive and emotional in my edit. I've been reading some of the harsher comments and it made me feel awful. I know that in many posts like this, people criticize the parents for not doing enough for their children. I literally did everything in my power to maintain a relationship with my son. I swallowed my pride and my dignity just to reach out to him. He may be my son, but you cannot ignore the fact that he was a fully grown adult when the divorce happened. He had finished college and was working. We are not talking about a minor here. Regardless of what he said or did, I always loved my son. I still do. But I struggled to find any connection with him and only got rejection in return. I'll be honest, the fact that he came back only for money really didn't sit well with me. I am not an ATM. I'm a human being. Also, I don't see how my son has any right to my money or my husband's money. I met my current husband long after my son cut ties with me. I started working in a good job after meeting my husband. My son wasn't part of this life because he didn't want to be. Speaking of that, after my son reached out, I also received some very nasty messages from my ex. That man had the audacity to tell me I was behaving like a witch and breaking my son's heart. He ranted about how I had always been a selfish woman, which is why no one wanted to be in my life. My ex thinks I should have been grateful to live as a maid with no dignity or self-respect. I don't even know what I ever saw in that man. He changed so much after we married. The first years were good, but now he is basically one of the worst human beings I know. No wonder none of his affairs or relationships lasted long. As soon as the fun part ended, the affair partner would see his real self, expecting the services of a wife while giving nothing in return. Being a mistress only requires enjoying the fun things in bed. But being his actual partner meant 24/7 servitude and probably getting cheated on, not so fun anymore. I stayed in contact with his sister for a while, so I knew what was happening in my ex's life. His sister and I drifted apart later. So I don't know exactly what my ex is doing, but knowing him, it's probably nothing good. However, if he has plenty of time to harass me and call me names, then I have very little patience or time for him. Today, I told him to stay away from me or I would report him for harassment. It worked pretty well because I haven't received a single message since. He was blocked afterward anyway. However, my son is trying to reach me through social media. It's ironic how the tables have turned. I have nothing more to say to my son. I'm sorry he chose a miserable father and that he can't afford his dream vacations, but the day he cut me out of his life, he also cut himself out of my bank account. You can't have everything in life. Update 2. I had a meeting with my son, but not because I wanted to. Yes, you read that correctly. My plan was to do nothing else since I had already made my position extremely clear. He wasn't getting money from me, nor anything else. And honestly, that seems to be what mattered most to him, which became painfully obvious during this unexpected meeting. The meeting happened at a cafe I often go to when I don't want to be in the office. I basically sit there with my coffee and can work a few hours without interruptions on something important. Until yesterday. My son found me there. He had actually gone looking for me at my workplace, which he somehow figured out, and someone must have told him he could find me at that cafe. I wasn't going to cause a scene in my special place, my corner of the world, so I let him sit down and finally say whatever he had to say. We made some small talk, and I learned more about his life. He spoke enthusiastically about his wife and his children. Before you start thinking this was some sort of heartwarming reunion and that maybe there was hope for us, let me stop you, it's impossible. I left that meeting completely disappointed. As soon as I brought up the cheating, my son loudly said, "Oh come on, Mom. This again? It's been years. Can't you get over that stupid thing already? How many times do I have to tell you it's not a big deal? You need to get over it now." After a while I got very upset and told him he needed to stop minimizing the situation because that was the exact reason we hadn't spoken in more than 10 years. My son got angry again and said there was nothing to discuss. He said I had moved on with a new man, had my fairy tale life, and therefore needed to stop clinging to the past and just focus on building a relationship with him now. I asked how I was supposedly meant to do that. He said I should start by taking his family on a cruise, just like I did with my husband and my stepchildren. I was furious. I told him there was absolutely no way I would ever spend a single cent on him. I told him he had grown into a terribly greedy and selfish man and that I wanted nothing to do with him. I also told him my lawyer had made sure he wouldn't receive a single cent of my inheritance, and that he could stop trying to contact me or follow me because nothing he said or did would be enough to change my mind. My son looked extremely angry and began arguing with me again, but I simply got up and started leaving. He followed me and then suddenly backpedaled, saying he was sorry and that he would really try to be better now. I told him I did not care who he planned to be from now on, I cared about who he had been up until now. He followed me all the way to the door of my workplace, but I told security he was not coming with me and was not allowed inside, not now and not ever. So the guard blocked his path, and my son stayed there arguing with him, saying I was his mother and he was talking to me. The guard told him he was following orders, and that was that. I don't know how long he stayed there arguing, but I went up to my office, and that was the end of it. Update 3. This is a small, unexpected update. Yesterday I actually met my son's wife, Trilla. Shortly after my meeting with my son, I received a message from Trilla begging me to meet with her. She seemed desperate to talk to me, although I didn't know what to say to her. I mean, I didn't even know her or what she was like. I was afraid she would end up being like my son, and I made it clear that I didn't want to be in contact with either her or my son. But she insisted that it had nothing to do with what my son wanted to talk to me about. That at least piqued my curiosity. After meeting with Trilla, it became clear to me that she hadn't come to speak on behalf of her husband. Trilla told me that my son had been devastated after our last meeting. He had been reading some of the messages from my conversation with him because she wanted to know what was so bad that her husband's mother didn't want to reconnect with him. She read everything, or at least almost everything, and she got a summary of several bad things my son had done over the years. She was genuinely worried about his mental well-being, which is why she read the messages. From what Trilla told me, it's clear my son had been lying to his wife about why I'm not in his life. And that wasn't the only thing he lied about. Trilla didn't even know that I divorced my ex after my son graduated from university. She had been told that we divorced when my son was 15 and that I was angry with him because he refused to stop visiting his father, just as I supposedly told him to. He told his wife that I didn't like how he didn't cut his father out of his life. Trilla also didn't know anything about the cheating, but after reading the messages and confirming it with me, she was completely devastated. She told me she has always been sensitive about cheating because her mother cheated on her father, which destroyed her family overnight. I won't go into detail because it was personal and I do not have permission to share it here. Trilla made it clear that cheating, or supporting cheating behavior, was a huge no-no in a relationship for her. I think that's why my son lied to her. I cannot believe that such an abomination of a son came out of my womb. I did not raise him like this, I promise you. I feel absolutely terrible for Trilla because she was clearly shaken when I told her the truth. She even cried a little because just talking about the cheating brought back traumatic memories. Still, she and I are fine. She thanked me for meeting with her because she needed to confirm what was happening and get more details, and she wanted to make sure I wasn't lying in those messages, which, with the amount of detail and information I gave her, was more than enough. I truly feel sorry for her because she seems like a good woman who ended up married to an exact clone of my ex. It's a shame my son turned out to be a lying, manipulative idiot. He could have been a better person. She also didn't know anything about him going out with the friends of my ex's mistresses. We talked about that during the conversation, and when she asked for details, I had to tell her. She said she felt disgusted to be married to someone so repulsive. I wish I could say that was the end of the bad news for Trilla, but my son also inherited my ex's cheating. After our conversation, she began checking her husband's phone more carefully and found what was already obvious to everyone. It saddens me for her because I imagine all she must be going through. 10 years ago, I was in her exact position. I shared the story with my husband and stepchildren and they are also appalled. It seems my son has turned into a very shady man. God, I can no longer recognize my son. Update 4. I'm surprised that none of you are tired of the ramblings of this old woman. I'm not technically old, but compared to most people on Reddit, I think I look like one. I see younger people commenting and reading my post, it shocked me a little. If any of you are my son's age, let me say this, don't be like my son. Take it from an old lady, being a complete piece of garbage will not bring you rewards. Some of you have been talking about karma and such. I think karma came for my son recently. I didn't update in the past few months because the post honestly slipped my mind. My stepdaughter reminded me that I had posted on Reddit about this situation. We had a lot of fun reading the comments and had a good laugh. She's the one who encouraged me to post in the first place when everything was happening, My stepdaughter is super funny. She said she hated when people never came back with updates. According to her, it gives false hope, which is super annoying because readers are left wondering what happened. I don't like disappointing my stepdaughter, and I don't want to disappoint you either, so this update is for you. You'll be happy to know I got rid of my son. He has more important problems to worry about now. His wife is divorcing him. He has already been served, but apparently he's trying to drag out the divorce as long as possible. We've been in contact with Trilla the whole time. I've turned into a sort of guide for people who have been cheated on in their marriage. Trilla was absolutely furious and confronted my son about it. My son tried denying everything and called me a liar. He tried very hard to convince her that I had made up stories to turn her against him. Then, just like my ex did to me, my son tried to downplay everything and told Trilla to calm down. He even told her she had been too obsessed with the cheating issue and that she needed to grow a thick skin because a lot of people cheat these days. I don't know what my son was thinking because any idiot could tell that was the worst thing to say. That night she kicked him out and told him to go stay with his cheating father. My son didn't want to because my ex doesn't live in a good place. He ruined himself wasting all his money on his various partners over the years. Besides, my ex didn't want my son staying with him because it would interfere with his dates. Sorry if this is too much information for you, I'm just trying to tell you everything. So my son is living with a friend now, and Trilla stays in the house with the kids. She told me that my son is still trying to win her back and has even told her that he would really try to make amends with me. I'm not sure how he plans to do that since I'm not even going to give him the time of day, but that's what he says he will do. Trilla isn't going to give in either. She's tired of his lies, cheating, and the whole situation. Well, I have to admit that his opinions about cheating are very disturbing. What's worse is that he trivialized Trilla's traumatic childhood and told her to get over it already. It seems like his vocabulary is stuck on that point. He doesn't seem to know any words beyond that. I'm glad Trilla is preserving her dignity and walking away. The good thing is that Trilla and I have become close. She even lets me see my grandchildren. They're very young, but they already call me grandma, which is part of the reason I've been calling myself an old lady here. I'm officially a grandmother. Trilla and I will keep in contact from now on. She often comes to me for support and help, and now I'm like a shoulder for her to cry on. My husband and my stepchildren have already met her and we all get along well. In fact, she's become friends with my stepdaughter, who is a bit younger than she is. I haven't heard anything from my son because I have him blocked on all my social media. I changed my number in the past, so he never had access to my new phone number. He also doesn't know my home address, so he can't show up here. The only places left are my workplace and my cafe, but I'm not willing to listen to him a second time. If he ruins my special place again, I won't hesitate to sue him for harassment. Update 5. I wasn't planning on an update about the end of my son and Trilla's divorce, but when the divorce includes me, it becomes personal. My son, being petty, vindictive, or simply an idiot who learned very well from his father, tried to punish Trilla in the divorce by demanding full custody. He doesn't agree that my grandchildren should be in contact with me, since he considers me an unhealthy figure for his children because I don't do what he wants. I don't think I'm a bad example for life, but he seems to be quite a terrible figure for his children, and for any human being trying to have a decent life. He tried to get this through his father's testimony, and I'll tell you more about him later, because his life hasn't been impressive in recent years. There's more than what I mentioned in my previous post. When my son and Trilla had the hearing in front of the judge to decide custody, my ex gave his testimony about what I was like as a wife and mother during our married years. I wasn't there, but we knew he would show up, and Trilla's lawyer brought the divorce papers, which showed that I divorced him basically for being unfaithful. That quickly discredited their argument that Trilla was a bad parent if she allowed me to be in contact with the children. After that failed attempt, during which Trilla was also arguing for full custody, my son tried to show that Trilla wasn't fit to be a mother because on a couple of occasions during these months, I had to pick up my grandchildren instead of her. They also tried to make it look like she had other priorities, such as meeting with men instead of picking up her kids. However, These meetings with men were nothing more than a friend of my son pretending to be a client so that Trilla wouldn't be able to pick up the kids and would have to ask me to do it. There were pictures of Trilla with this friend meant to show them as a couple arguing, but it was basically her realizing there was no client, just her ex's friend. My ex argued that she should have gone to him first to pick up the kids, but since she was supposedly sleeping with random men, she didn't want anyone to find out and supposedly asked me for the favor. This also held no weight with the judge, because the entire divorce, aside from the custody case, had already proven he was unfaithful. In the end, the judge told them to find a way to reach an agreement that was best for the children, but that he didn't like what my son was doing at all. When they couldn't reach an agreement because Trilla couldn't trust my son not to pull something shady, they went back to the judge. And after some proof that my son was neglecting his kids, the judge granted full custody to Trilla with supervised visitation for my son. The judge certainly had reasons for this, considering everything my son had tried in the previous hearings. The divorce itself wasn't that exciting because there was evidence of my son's infidelity, so things moved without complications, despite my son's complaints and his lack of desire to pay child support. This is where even I was fed up with my son and did something a little petty. I invited Trilla and my grandchildren to our annual vacation. My husband and my stepchildren liked Trilla and my grandkids, so it wasn't as if it was something bad. I asked them first, and they were happy to bring them, just as much as I was. Yes, it looks like I did it to spite my son, but mostly I just wanted to spend time with them. Trilla is like the daughter-in-law I wish I had, but instead I got what you already know. Luckily, life has rewarded me with Trilla and my stepchildren, who make up for much of the bad, and with a husband who makes up for what my ex did. And speaking of my ex, that became part of the conversation during the vacation. My stepchildren, especially my stepdaughter, she's a huge gossip and loves being here, wanted to know more about my ex. Trilla has already visited my ex's apartment a couple of times at my son's request, and it's worse than I imagined. When she told me my son couldn't live with him because he was small and didn't have space for his girlfriends, I imagined a tiny apartment. But it's worse, because if it's not infested with rats, it's because the rats don't want to share space with my ex and the company he receives. My ex has become addicted to alcohol, but his girlfriends aren't much better. Trilla swears that one of the women he brought for Christmas a few years ago had rotten teeth from meth use. Even though she seemed normal during dinner, she still had those common traits of addicts. My ex doesn't seem to be doing that, but he certainly isn't in better shape. Other than that, we are a very happy blended family. Once we removed the cancer from our lives, only the good part remained. It's strange having a better relationship with my daughter-in-law and stepchildren than with my own son, but life doesn't have to be so traditional.